going guys, Chris here with my first guide for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and today we're going to be taking a good look at the M4, a pretty versatile choice with a good balance of stats which can be selected right from the start. So the M4A1 returns to Modern Warfare 2 from past games in the series, under the assault rifle category. It's a very common standard issue weapon for the US military, described as being one of the defining firearms of the 21st century. But its story began quite a while ago, back in the early 80s, when the US government requested for a shortened carbine variant of the M16A2, a more comfortable weapon to carry and one better suited for close range combat. Unlike the original burst firing M4 carbine, the M4A1 found in the game has access to fully automatic fire, allowing for much more aggressive tactics, better for pushing forwards and clearing rooms where several enemies might be situated at once. With the gun being chambered for the 5.56 NATO round, this gives it slightly less power than a fully fledged rifle cartridge. Still plenty enough to do some serious damage, especially within shorter sight lines, but lacking as much range as some of its competitors, with the M4 having more in common with carbine type guns, firing that intermediate round. More punch than a typical handgun bullet, but not quite the ferocity of a true assault rifle round. With that said, in most situations where the M4A1 would be used, this would be fine enough to get the job done, with the gun still having an effective range of up to 600 meters nevertheless. The actual M4 model in the game is based on the newer variants used by modern militaries today, though its overall function is still pretty much the same as it always has been, to provide effective fire over a close to medium distance, being reliable in a variety of different combat scenarios, hence why it's used by almost all the US Special Operation units. So anyway, let's talk a bit about those stats and how the M4 fits into Modern Warfare 2. The gun's going to deal 28 damage pretty much everywhere on the body up to about 26 meters, translating over to a 4-shot kill up close against an enemy with full health. Of course, beyond this, that damage is going to sink down a bit to 22, right the way up to 45 meters, which is where the M4's minimum damage value of just 18 will be dealt, basically making it a 6-shot kill from this point on. So not too bad within those earlier ranges, but not exactly the best against players further away. Landing headshots is obviously going to have a greater effect on dishing out the damage, essentially making it a 3 to 4 shot kill depending on range. So if one of your shots strays at eye level, then it's often going to be enough to give you an edge in a gunfight. Generally, these individual bullet damage stats aren't exactly fantastic when compared to a lot of the M4's competitors, though because of the fast firing nature of the gun, shooting at 811 RPM, one of the highest speeds of all the base game assault rifles, being 70 RPM quicker than the STB 5.56, this can often help to make up for those slightly lower than average damage figures, balancing things out while making the M4 a pretty brutal weapon to use for CQC. It's not got the quickest kill times of the pack despite that rapid fire rate, though with it dealing the same damage values everywhere on the body, at least it's going to feel quite consistent. So if we run a little firing test with the M4 from 10 meters, this gives us an idea of how the weapon's generally going to kick around. The recoil is going to follow a fairly similar sort of pattern every time, with some slight deviation between tests, but nothing much. The M4 is going to be affected by vertical recoil the most for the first 8 or so shots fired, and then we notice the gun starts to lean slightly to the left, before returning back over to the right towards the end of the magazine, basically giving us a little bit of an S shape, with shots being affected by upwards force of the weapon throughout. Bullet groupings are slightly tighter for the first few shots, but then accuracy takes a bit of a hit, basically making the M4 a bit trickier to be precise with over range, especially with it having a fair bit of vertical recoil to contend with, lowering overall stability. With the first few shots not really being affected by horizontal recoil too much, this means that you should be able to be a tad more accurate while firing in shorter bursts, should your target stray outside of the gun's comfort zone, which will help you control the kick while increasing the M4's effectiveness over range. With that said, the shot groupings do seem to get a bit tighter with prolonged fire, so if you're snapping from target to target or taking on someone with armour, then keeping that trigger pulled is usually going to be the best thing to do in most close to mid-range situations, taking full advantage of the M4's nippy fire rate, which goes pretty well with hip fire too, spraying close range targets with lots of hot lead. Another thing to make the M4 just that little bit better suited for close quarter combat is the fact that, at base level, it's not really got a bad set of manoeuvrability stats. It holds 30 rounds at standard, which is pretty normal for the assault rifles, though because you'll be inflicting slightly less damage per bullet, and because more shots are likely to stray off target due to the gun's high fire rate, making expenditure trickier to moderate, This might mean that you'll struggle to take on several players one after the other with a fully loaded magazine, especially over range. Thankfully though, the M4's usually got you covered with its snappy reload times, with tactical reloads clocking in at just 2.57 seconds, and empties only taking a little bit longer at 2.73 seconds, both some of the quickest speeds in the assault rifle category. This should help you get back into the action sooner in between engagements, thus helping to counter the fact that you'll probably be burning through those mags at a slightly faster rate than normal. General mobility is fairly balanced, with the M4 having similar stats to most of the other assault rifles. It doesn't particularly do anything bad here, having a fairly average aim down sight speed and a slightly quicker than average exit speed, both of which should allow the gun to perform well enough within its optimal range. It's not the most mobile thing in the world, especially compared to the likes of the SMGs, but for an assault rifle, it's generally able to handle under pressure better than some of its counterparts, allowing it to slot into aggressive playstyles fairly well. Anyway, let's talk a bit about those Gunsmith attachments. With the M4 being more optimised for closer range fights in general, you might want to play towards its strengths, or counter some of its weaknesses, to make it a more viable weapon over distance. Some extended barrel attachments, like the High Tower and EXF, are going to help to do this, while sacrificing some mobility. Though on the flip side, if you want to make the M4 more aggressive, then you should probably opt for one of the Tempest barrels, both offering increased manoeuvrability in exchange for longer ranged effectiveness. Adding an optical attachment might be beneficial with the M4, with its iron sights not being quite as clear as some of the other guns, though I'd probably recommend choosing one that best suits the M4's range, probably a short distance sight like one of the Cronin Minis, or one of the low zoom telescopic ones, such as the Corio Enforcer. I'd recommend picking a laser attachment to play towards the M4's strengths by buffing some mobility stats, which is ideal for close range fights where it's going to perform at its best. The FFS Olay V is a good one that reduces both ADS and sprint to fire speeds, though for a more traditional laser that tightens up hipfire, you could pick something like the FTAC Grimline, also another decent option for boosting effectiveness up close, or even the canted Viro .7 to bypass those sights altogether, all good options for close quarter combat. As for the muzzle, most of these are going to improve on the M4's weaknesses rather than buffing its strengths. If you're prepared to sacrifice some mobility, then you might want to go for something to tighten up those shot groupings, such as the VLK Flash Hider. Though because the gun does generate a fair bit of upwards kick, picking one that gives you better vertical recoil control, such as the X10 ported 290, should also prove to be quite useful. This also applies to the underbarrel attachments too, as quite a few of these are going to nerf mobility in favour of tightening up your recoil, like the FTAC Tiger for example. In saying so, it all depends on how aggressive you intend to be, and for a lot of you guys, you might prefer to keep the M4 without an underbarrel or muzzle attachment if you intend to run and gun. Because the M4 burns through its ammo at a faster pace than a lot of the other weapons, then a larger magazine might help you out. Though once again, prepare to be hit by some mobility nerfs, possibly making the gun a tad less aggressive. Looking at the grips, the X10 and Phantom grips are going to improve on some of that aggression by speeding up ADS and sprint to fire speeds. You're going to get more recoil, but in close quarters, this will probably be worth the trade-off. And finally, regarding the stock, for a good balance between manoeuvrability and recoil control, you might be best sticking with the base stock, though there are options here to boost movement speed for better optimization in close quarters, like the Tempest P80 for example, which I'd say is probably going to be more viable with this gun in particular, rather than opting for something to stabilize the recoil, which is going to lower the M4's short range effectiveness by nerfing its mobility stats. So in conclusion, the M4 assault rifle is a pretty well balanced aggressive option that'll go hand in hand with run and gun tactics. Those 5.56 rounds aren't exactly going to punish your enemies on their own, but in large volumes they're going to get the job done, with the gun's high fire rate helping to balance things out and make up for those lower than average damage figures. Within a close to medium range, this makes the M4 quite deadly. It's not got the fastest kill times of the bunch, but that rapid stream of bullets will help to ensure that any missed shots won't prove to be too problematic. And with the gun killing in 4 to 6 shots anywhere on the body and limbs, this makes it more consistent to use too. Unlike a lot of the other weapons, they can have varying results depending on where you hit your target. Of course, firing quickly does equate to a faster build-up of recoil, which shouldn't be too hard to control against players within shorter sight lines, but may cause more bullets to stray off target beyond. And if you are taking on someone quite far away, then you might be better off bursting your shots into smaller groupings to keep this recoil under control, with the M4 having a pretty high level of accuracy for its first few shots, despite it being a bit jumpy. Faster than average reloads and a decent set of mobility stats allow it to perform adequately where it's designed to be used the most, keeping you engaged in the battle without any notable drawbacks here. And in a way, this kinda ties into the reality of the weapon itself, being more of a carbine type firearm than a true assault rifle. That's it for this one folks, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the guide, please be sure to give it a like and to share it with anyone else who might also too, which would be much appreciated. Subscribe and stay tuned to see more videos on Modern Warfare 2 and other games, and I'll be seeing you in that next one.